Would you like to be somebody who understands what the three pillars of well-being are, and you need these three pillars in order to find well-being in life? Then listen to this entire video where I explain the second pillar of the three in depth and shortly mention what the other two pillars are. Before we get into it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So from some perspectives, life really isn't too complex. As humans, sort of the main thing we strive for is to really survive and reduce suffering. And we want to aim for a life of well-being and create something, whilst we're alive. And there are three pillars that are almost necessary to have in life. And if you don't have these three pillars, you'll essentially suffer, whether it's physically or mentally. Like, you can think of it like a chair with three legs. If one of the legs breaks, then the chair collapses and you fall. And here the chair is a metaphor for your life. The key here is to balance these three pillars. That, in some sense, that is sort of the art of life. People can be experts in one pillar but unskilled in the other two, which really costs them, and the skill of life is balance. Now, the three pillars are essentially number one, health; number two, a career or purpose; and number three, relationships with either family or friends or social relationships. And I already made a video discussing how to ensure the existence of the health pillar, so the first one, which I will link in the description if you want to check that out. And today I will just be discussing the second pillar, which is the pillar on relationships. Now, relationships deserve to be considered as a pillar of life because they literally keep you alive, and for various reasons, which I'll explain in the following. So first of all, relationships keep loneliness at bay. Loneliness should not be underestimated. Loneliness increases the rate for getting illnesses and your body deteriorating. I think the YouTube channel Kurzgesagt stated that loneliness increases your rate of cancer faster than smoking cigarettes, if I remember correctly. They made a YouTube video on loneliness. I can highly recommend you check it out. And that's quite terrible. And loneliness also seems to increase Alzheimer's, dementia, or the risk of you getting Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, anxiety, and also cardiovascular issues like high blood pressure and heart disease, which are serious health issues you'd really want to avoid. And the more you worry about your loneliness, the more you sort of get caught in this mental downward spiral that essentially works in the following. So if you feel already a bit lonely, your brain might start to think of excuses as to why you are lonely, like people don't like you, you're not cool enough, you're not attractive enough, things like that. And then when you go into social interactions, you become hypersensitive and hyper aware to people's social cues and interactions. And then if there's any sort of, any interaction, you might automatically interpret it as a gesture that is against you, or is an indication of, or it's a how do you call it? It's a gesture might sort of justify as to why you're not cool enough, or you might interpret it as why people don't like you, and you sort of find reasons as to why you feel lonely and why you're alone, and they just reinforce the self-image you have of yourself. And this just makes you want to isolate yourself more and draw back from social interaction. So it's quite a dangerous, quite a vicious cycle, really. And there is also a very famous study on well-being where researchers followed the life of a group of Harvard graduates and tried to they followed them through the life and tracked them in regards to their well-being. And at the end of their lives, they asked these people and figured out, which of them were, I don't like to use the word happy, but let's say they were sort of happy or fulfilled and they tried to figure out why these graduates were happy and why these others weren't. And what it boiled down to was the happy people were surrounded by friends and family, and those that were unhappy were surrounded by, well, nobody. They were more lonely. So that's very important to remember. And the second reasons why relationships are a key to your well-being is because they literally keep you sane and not turn insane. What your friends and family are continually doing is keeping you on track in regards to what social norms constitute, and that keeps you sane. Your connections, your family connections, social connections, your relationships are nodes that connect you to society. They are sort of the front line to society in your case. And in order to survive in society, the society needs to want to include you. And if the social groups do not like you, you will not be included, and hence you will be alone. And during times of cavemen, you know, the sort of antecedents that from whom we stemmed from, if they were excluded from groups, that essentially meant death. That would constitute death, because alone it would be far harder to survive, because you need to achieve or do all the chores and survival processes by yourself, like hunting, gathering, protecting, making fire, etc. And doing that by yourself is a lot harder, whereas in a group you can split up work processes, and it's far more efficient. And if the group doesn't like you, they will exclude you, and hence you essentially die. And what your relationships do is keep you in check with what is necessary in order to be included in a society, because to a degree they are, like I said, the extensions of the society. They are the forefront, and they give you feedback. They tell you if your jokes aren't funny. They praise you if you do something altruistic or generous. In some way, they raise you like parents, and they prepare you to develop the skills necessary in order to be wanted and included in social groups. And it's important to remember that individuals are very unique, of course, and if there is no society, hypothetically, there would just be many people who would be very, very, very different from one another. Humans are idiosyncratic. You need to, in order for like a social norm to be created, you need to trade part of your uniqueness in order to be part of a coherent society with cohesive norms. Because if everybody would be acting how they wanted and showing their true face, let's say, there would be no coherent norm. So you need to sort of find this balance. And you need to restrict the behavioral manifestations of your uniqueness. You can't go running butt naked down the streets because you feel like it. And well, you can do it, but you'll bear probably unwanted consequences, which may increase the risk of you being banished from an in-group, let's say. And, well, even though we're not cavemen anymore, it is still very relevant because, like I said, social groups keep you from becoming lonely, and you can also trade resources with them, which will keep you alive, basically, and mentally sane. And since your friends keep you sane, that means they are preventing you from declining into insanity. Now, what does insanity mean? I honestly don't know the answer to that, but what I can tell you is a story of an experience I had last year where I was alone for 3 weeks in the summer vacation with close to no human contact. And I can tell you it's quite frightening because your brain starts to decline in its mood. I felt a lot more emotionally volatile. I was more grumpy. I was more impatient, and I was with my dogs, 2 dogs here, alone for 3 weeks, and that I became very impatient with them and sort of quickly turning aggressive, let's say, which was pretty bad. It was just that I felt a lot more negative emotions. And I did have lunch with a group of people maybe 2-3 times across the 3 weeks. And I always, after seeing people and having some sort of social interaction, I automatically felt more calm and relaxed in my head. I felt more normal, let's say. And that was very important to keep me in check, really. I don't know what I would have done without those social interactions, but it's important to remember that essentially being lonely equals more negative emotions, I think, and being amongst other people equals more, not automatically, but is more likely to provide you with positive emotions. And the third reason for why relationships are such an important pillar of life is that meaning can be found in deep, committed relationships. There's an ancient story of Saint George, who is a knight of a castle, and a dragon comes along and tries to attack the castle, and then Saint George needs to go out and fight the dragon in order to protect his people, and he wins. He kills the dragon, although it is a very difficult challenge and almost kills him, and he is rewarded then with the Virgin Mary. And the key of this story to this case is that a purpose in life for people is to protect their kind. And this hero narrative of St. George is where meaning is found, with one foot in chaos, battling dragons, and the other foot in order, perhaps with home and family and what is known and predictable. And this home and family and friends is a cornerstone of meaning. It is half of the meaning. And without that, you don't have meaning. And a life without meaning is just a life of suffering, I would say, because you have suffering anyhow, but then you need to find a justification for that suffering, like meaning, a purpose that will let you think, okay, I'm suffering, but this meaning is so powerful that I'm willing to continue living and fighting through this suffering, because the meaning it's worth the suffering, let's say. And it seems like an unconscious instinct for humans, or lies within humans, to want to protect their kind and nurture their kind, and this seems meaningful and purposeful. And besides having deep, engaging friendships characterized by trust and commitment, besides having deep, engaging friendships that are characterized by trust and commitment, they're just very, very valuable, and they offer so much value in many different aspects. They can give you support and experiences, and you may have reflected that at least I feel like this, that experiencing adventures alone are not the same as when you experience adventures accompanied by friends. Adventures become a lot more meaningful and magical when undergone with other humans. And it seems like we're primed to venture into chaos and the unknown, go on adventures with other human beings at our side. And perhaps this is because it just increases our rate for survival. If you're fighting a monster with other people, the likelihood of you taking out the monster and succeeding will be higher than if you do it alone, really. And this group dynamic is deeply ingrained within our existence, I think. This is probably why it is a pillar of our well-being. And humans weren't made to exist alone. They were designed to thrive in groups which are characterized by meaningful relationships. And if you're interested in how to build meaningful relationships, I can highly recommend applying your speech to aim for meaningful conversations, because they are sort of the foundation of meaningful relationships. And I have made some videos where I give advice on how to have meaningful conversations, which I will also leave in the description if you'd like to look at them. So hence, in conclusion, the three pillars of well-being, as I stated, are health, relationships with friends and family, and finally career and purpose, which I will do the next video on. And in order to set up the pillar of relationships, you need to, have meaningful friendships, have friends, and be engaged in social interactions in order to reduce your rate of loneliness, because that is what jeopardizes your well-being. It makes you suffer. You need to engage with them in order that they not only do they keep you sane, but they also they keep you away from loneliness, but they also keep you mentally sane and well adjusted to be included in society and be included in games in life, at work or whatever. And finally, it's really meaningful relationships will also prevent suffering, because they give your life essentially a purpose. And this is, I think, a very common thing for families. Like parents will find a lot of purpose and meaning in raising their children and having a unit of a family. It's sort of like a narrative of their life, which gives their life purpose, I would say. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.